So I'll start. Namaste all, good evening. So we are into third session of our discussion on Shivaji and Hindavi Swarajya. So in the initial sessions, we saw what was the idea behind Swarajya, how this Hindavi Swarajya was for protection of Hindu Dharma. We saw how the administration was being taken care in Hindavi Swarajya, how was the revenue, how was the taxation system, what were the sources of income. We also saw how was the discipline in place in Hindavi Swarajya, and also had a towards the end we had a look at how was the intelligence network or how the informers in Hindavi Swarajya were operating, and how it proved and played an important role in expansion and in protection of Hindavi Swarajya. So today's session will look at some of the important battles in which Shivaji led himself, and we'll have a look at the Navy, how the Navy was established, what was the importance, and how it operated. And we'll end with the unique way in which Shivaji tackled with British. So coming to the battles, so yeah, some part of this we saw in the previous session. Still, we'll have a look at it. So Aurangzeb often addressed Shivaji as Mountain Rat. The obvious reason for this was Shivaji being having less resources at the beginning of Hindavi Swarajya, had to take advantage of biggest resource with him, which was Sahyadri mountain range, which is nothing but a part of western coast, Western Ghats. And yeah, so prior to direct confrontation of Shivaji with Mughals, so the major region of Swarajya was confined to Sahyadri mountain range. There, Shivaji conquered some of the forts. Some of the forts he built, and the reason behind building the forts is if there is a fort on one of the mountain, and this mountain range, never there is a case that there is only one mountain. So there is a series of mountains, series of hills, and if there is a fort built on one of the hill or one of the mountain, so there is a high chance that when there is an attack from the enemy may take help of the surrounding mountains, surrounding hills, take their ammunitions on those and fire the cannons. That is highly possible. So for that, it was very necessary to build a chain of forts. So it is not just one fort. So we have to take care of our neighbors. So it is a old thing that we follow. So it is we staying safe is not sufficient when we need to take care of our neighbors, however they are. Sometimes we don't have a choice over the neighbors, and we see in our day-to-day life that two of our neighbors are, though they are creating a nuisance for us, but we have to stay with our neighbors. So same strategy. So Shivaji, they adopted this strategy of building the chain of forts. And so though many historians claim that Shivaji fought only in the regions of Sahyadri, but the reality is he strategically used the mountains, Sahyadri. However, there were some battles which were fought and won, and which were fought in the open field. So the examples I have given: the Battle of Belsar, which is believed to be a first battle which was fought in Hindavi Swarajya. The Battle of Kolhapur, this was immediately after assassination of Afzal Khan. And the Battle of Dindori, which was fought on Shivaji's return from second campaign of Surat. The key factor in Shivaji's warfare was surprise attack. So it was very important. So attacking the enemy and retreating back before the enemy could realize that from where the attack is and what is the number of soldiers in this raid. So before realizing that, retreating back. So that was a surprise factor. And there was one more strategy which Shivaji followed in his lifetime. Was he never repeated his plans after the success. Like, for example, if we take example of Afzal Khan, so he did not use that strategy anywhere else, as this strategy was like known to everyone. Strategy he used against Shaista Khan was altogether different. Strategies he's used against Portuguese, British were all different. So nowhere he repeated the strategy. And Shivaji had personally led in some of the battles, taken part in some of the battles, and I have listed them. So Battle of Pratapgarh, Surat campaign, conquest of Zavadi. Zavadi is a forest area near to Pratapgarh region. Raid on Shaista Khan, Battle of Kumbarkhind and Battle of Dindori. Yeah, there was one more battle where Shivaji was not completely involved. It was Battle of Pawankhand, where it was fought at a place called Pawankhand, which is near to Kolhapur. And Shivaji was trapped in Panhala fort, but with the help of his soldiers, he escaped the fort, escaped the siege around the fort. But on their when they were trying to reach the nearby fort, the rear part of the army was attacked by the general of Adil Shah, Siddhi Jauhar, and his associates. So there, one of his commander, Haji Prabhu Deshpande, he took the charge of half of the army, and he requested Shivaji to go to the nearby safe place, and he guarded that Pawankhand region till he got the indication of Shivaji reaching the safe place. So next, one more key factor is Shivaji never confronted all the armies together. So during initial years of Swarajya, he dealt only with Adil Shahi. And when clashes with Mughals were inevitable, when they were clearly visible, so he signed a peace agreement. He signed a treaty with Adil Shah, and that front of the Swarajya was kept at peace. When he was when Shivaji escaped Agra, so after that he signed a treaty or agreement with Mughals, and that period of 3 to 4 years when it was the front of Mughal was peaceful. So that time he utilized for the campaigns against Portuguese, and he acquired some of the regions of Goa. Though he could not acquire Goa completely, some of the regions, like the most parts of northern Goa, which is called as Bardesh that time, he acquired that region. In December 1669, so Aurangzeb broke the agreement by attempting to try to imprison Prataprao Guzar and Niraji Ravji. So after the escape from Agra, as per Treaty of Purandar, Sambhaji, Shivaji's son, was appointed as a commander in Mughal army as per the treaty, and he was given a charge of the army of 5,000 horsemen. As Sambhaji was minor at that point, he was around 8 to 9 years of age. So on his behalf, Prataprao Guzar and Niraji Ravji were appointed in Mughal court. So this treaty was broken. So when Aurangzeb tried to break the agreement and attack these two officers, then Shivaji broke the agreement and started the campaign against Mughals. So the essence is he never took or confronted all the enemies at once. So we can see that strategy in all his battle planning. So in the interest of time, there are plenty of battles in which Shivaji took part. There were many battles in which, though Shivaji was not directly involved, he was involved in the planning and making the plans. So I have taken 2 of his battles as part of this session, where we are covering the surprise factor, the factor of strategies, and the factor of always on high alert. So this is speciality of Shivaji, that he was always on high alert. He never ignored the things which could be crucial. So first battle that I have included in this session is Battle of Pratapgarh, or the fight against Afzal Khan. And the second one I have included is raid on Shaista Khan. It was in 1659. So Afzal Khan, so Hindavi Swarajya was expanding, and there were close to 35 forts in the Swarajya by this time. And now it was making Adil Shahi weak. It was directly attacking the crucial parts of Adil Shahi. So Adil Shah deployed Afzal Khan to either imprison or kill Shivaji and put an end to attempt of this Hindavi Swaraj. Afzal Khan was brave, skilled, and influential commander in Adil Shahi court. Apart from this, Afzal Khan was known for treachery against rivals. The one incident had happened with Shahaji Raje, Shivaji's father, where Afzal Khan, disguised, he pretending to be a friend, had come for a friendship with Shahaji. He made a plan to arrest Shahaji, and Shahaji was arrested. This was around the time when Shivaji had recently started with the attempts of Hindavi Swarajya. The reference is to the Battle of Belser, so which was fought against Adil Shahi forces. So at that time, Shahaji was in the prison of Adil Shahi. So Afzal was known for treachery against rivals. He was accompanied by a huge army, 30,000. And we saw in previous session that the volume or the number of soldiers in Shivaji's army by this time were close to 10,000. The first thing Afzal Khan did was emotionally break or provoke Shivaji to bring him or to force him to come into open field. So for that, he did two things. One was destruction of famous temples, Tulza Bhavani temple in Turzapur and Vitthal Mandir in Pandharpur. So of this, Tulza Bhavani was a deity of Shivaji's family. The intention was to provoke and make the enemy emotionally weak. And if the enemy is weak, emotionally weak, then there is a high chance that enemy or the other party would leave their strong areas and come into open field, which was a strategy adopted by Afzal Khan. Not only this, his Shivaji's brother-in-law, Babaji Nimbalkar, who was in the camp of Adil Shahi, was with Afzal Khan in this campaign, was forcefully converted to Islam. And the regions of Pune, Supe, Shirwal, Saswad, these are regions in and around Pune. These were captured. From Shivaji's side, there was no reaction. There was no attack, no retaliation, nothing till this point. So we may feel that was Shivaji not brave, or what was Shivaji afraid? Was Shivaji scared by Afzal's attack? No, he was not. It was a part of his plan. It shows the mental strength of a person. That even though there were attempts to provoke, the person did not react, and we'll see what happened next. So by this time, all Shivaji's trusted commanders, they decided, they expressed their views that they should confront Afzal Khan. Initially, they said all the associates were of the opinion that Shivaji should not confront Afzal Khan. Rather, all the soldiers will take care of that. And Shivaji can think of going into hideout or a secret place. But Shivaji was not, Shivaji rejected his plan. And after that, everyone agreed. And Shivaji started making his plan. Shivaji, with his selected associates, shifted to Pratapgarh, which is a dense forest in the region of Zawadi. he sent his diplomat Gopinath Bokil for discussions with Afzal Khan. He was instructed, Gopinath Bokil was instructed by Shivaji that do whatever you can, try your best to convince Afzal Khan so that he comes to Pratapgarh. And Gopinath Bokil, he succeeded in that. He convinced Afzal Khan to the extent that Shivaji is afraid, Shivaji is scared, he is not ready to come out of his house. And for weeks he hasn't come out of his house because of your campaign. And now he is ready for surrender on the condition that Afzal Khan should come to Pratapgarh. And the meeting will be at the base of Pratapgarh. So though Gopinath Bokil was sent for this duty, he did not restricted his work to that part. While returning back, he collected the crucial information from Afzal Khan's camp. And with all this all this promises made by Gopinath Bokil. So even he went on to say that Shivaji is ready to surrender all his forts to you and he is ready to take refuge under your guidance and he will work for Adil Shah under your guidance. So he was given assurance to this level. And Afzal Khan finally decided to meet Shivaji near Pratapgarh. And it was decided that this meeting will not be with army, it will be with selected people, selected warriors, we can say bodyguards in that time. So though Afzal Khan agreed for the meeting, was he really coming for just for the meeting? My opinion is no. He had a full plan or he was completely of a plan that he has to assassinate or he has to kill Shivaji. All the arrangements were done, and so when this all arrangements were being done, Shivaji secretly sent 4 of his commanders to recapture the lost regions, which were with Afzal Khan. And different commanders were deployed in Zawri forest, which was the surrounding area of, which was the area surrounding Pratapgarh. The plan is surprise attack and always alert, and yeah, we'll see what happened next actually. Yeah, in case of unfortunate incident, all were instructed to work under the orders of Netaji Palkar. There is nothing coming up that if anything unfortunate incident happens, so install my son as a leader and he will be leader and you all will be following him. That is not the case. He is asking everyone to follow the orders of Netaji Palkar. So as he was always alert, he was wearing the armor inside his normal clothes. And even he made the arrangements of tiger claws, Vaganaka. The word used by Shivaji for that is Vaganaka. It is this has to be worn in fingers of the hand, and if someone looks it from front, it looks like as if someone is wearing the rings, but at the inside of the palm there are sharp blades which can be used at emergency on the enemy. And at the time of actual meeting, this is what happened. So Afzal Khan called, asked him to meet and tried to attack from the back with the dagger. And as Shivaji was alert, he was wearing the armor, Afzal Khan could not harm Shivaji, and with the help of tiger claws, Afzal Khan was killed. Afzal Khan did not die with Shivaji's this attack with tiger claws. He tried to fled the place. He tried to run away. But one of Shivaji's associate, Sambhaji Kauji, he chased Afzal Khan, and Afzal Khan was beheaded. His head was sent to Rajgarh, where Jijamata was residing. She was staying. And the rest of army of Afzal Khan was attacked after this. So the indication was given to the army, which was hiding in the forest, in terms of cannon fire. And following this, the soldiers hiding in the surrounding forest started a surprise attack on Afzal Khan's army. Next day, the place called Vai, where Afzal Khan's base camp was there, it was attacked. So we don't see something like, yeah, today I have killed Afzal Khan, so take rest. No, that part we don't see here. So immediately the next campaign started. After attack on Afzal Khan's, so whoever were in forest with Afzal Khan, all were slaughtered, all were killed. And those who were on base camp, whoever survived, they were allowed to leave, keeping their weapons behind, keeping their weapons, horses, all the belongings, whatever the precious items were with them. All were allowed to go by surrendering all the belongings. And literally all were allowed to go with one cloth on their body. Even the campaign did not stop here. So there were two parts of the army made there. And one part of that was led by Shivaji himself, attacked and conquered the Adil Shahi regions of Karad, Kolhapur, Panhala. So this area is in and around Kolhapur. The other troop under Netoji Palkar attacked Adil Shahi regions till around Miraz, Athani. And Netoji Palkar even reached the border of Bijapur. He tried to attack Bijapur, conquer it, but he failed in that attempt. But he captured Miraz, Athani, and returned back. So everywhere, all were under impression that Afzal Khan is powerful and Shivaji is nothing in front of him when compared to resources and number of army. So many of them were sure that Afzal Khan will be victorious in this campaign, and either Shivaji will be killed or he will be imprisoned and taken to Bijapur. And all were on the celebration mode. But what happened was altogether reverse of that. So Shivaji could have thought that after killing Afzal Khan, so let us take some rest and plan the other things afterwards. So, but that did not happen. The campaign started immediately, and the additional region was added to Hindavi Swaraj. So immediately after this, this Panhala, which was captured by Shivaji. So after that, Adil Shah sent one more commander, Siddhi Johar. So I made a mention of it some time back, that we surrounded the Panhala fort and tried to conquer it. And Shivaji was in that siege for around more than 3 months. After that, he escaped. And he did not repeat the mistake of staying in I would not say mistake, but the decision he took of staying in Panhala for or not acting immediately when Siddhi Johar was advancing. Same thing Shivaji never mentioned in the rest of his life. The similar kind of mistake. Is one more topic in Shivaji's life, which is raid on Shaista Khan. So when Shivaji was trapped in Panhala Fort, and Adil Shah had already sent Siddhi Johar to capture Shivaji. At the same time, Adil Shah sent a letter to Aurangzeb, who had recently become emperor, sent a letter to Aurangzeb saying that both of us are protectors of Islam, and I'm doing the campaigns against Shivaji, and you must also send your army against Shivaji in the campaign. It's again the religious appeals. So whoever says that Aurangzeb or Adil Shah or they were not fighting on the religious front, definitely they were fighting for the religion. So Aurangzeb used to have a title of Ghazi. So what it means? What is the meaning of Ghazi? Yeah. I think nothing surprising if I say that the Mughal Empire or this Adil Shahi were for Islam, they were not secular. So when Shaista Khan was deployed against to capture the region of Swarajya, so Shaista Khan came to Pune around 1660. He made his camp at Pune. Next 3 years, Shaista Khan was in Pune, and in these 3 years, he captured only one fortress of Chakhand. It was not even a fort; it was a fortress. So Gadi. It was not a fort. You might have heard the words like Gadi and Gad. So Gad is or fort is something which is the large in area, and it has several parts. And the fortress is a simple region which is fortified and not a fort in true sense. So there is one phrase in with reference to Chittorgarh that Gado mein Gad, Chittorgarh, Baki sab Gadiya. So the only fort, it may be an exaggeration that other forts are not fort but fortress. But this literally translates that into the only fort in Rajputana is Chittorgarh, and the rest all are fortresses, not the forts. In 3 years, Shaista Khan could capture only Chakhand. This, yeah, I think the slides got repeated. Okay. He was camping in Pune, and where was he staying? He was staying in Lal Mahal, which was Shivaji's home during his childhood. I did made a mention that Shivaji was in Bangalore for a few years, as Shahaji was working for Adil Shah, and he was a given region in and around Bangalore. And when Shivaji was around 10 to 11 years of age, Shahaji called Jizabai, Shivaji, and rest of his servants to Bangalore for a few years. And after coming back to Pune, around after 3 to 4 years, the place where Shivaji, Jizamata were staying was Lal Mahal. So this Lal Mahal was in Pune, and the exact region where it was is if anyone of has traveled to Pune and seen the Shaniwar Wada, it was where in the same region, not far. It was not so far from that place where Shaniwar Wada is. So informers were there in Shivaji's informers were there in Shaista Khan's camp. And when Shaista Khan he camped in Lal Mahal, he made some structural changes in Lal Mahal. Some of the doors were filled with clay or the cementing material of that time. Some of the rooms were restructured, and even Shivaji sent his diplomat Raghunath Pant Korde for discussions with Shaista Khan. But Shaista Khan refused to meet this person. And there's nothing surprising to understand why he refused. So there was a past of Afzal Khan. So the case of Afzal Khan was there, which had happened recently, 1 or 2 or 3 years back, prior to this. So now Shivaji decided that this Shaista Khan is not ready for the meeting. Now we should go to his camp for the meeting. And the plan was not that simple. So now he planned to attack Shaista Khan during midnight. He selected 400 soldiers for the raid. Of that, not all went with him. The actual number of soldiers which went with Shivaji inside Lal Mahal is not clearly recorded. The record just says that there were 400 soldiers selected for this raid. And there were additional 2,000 soldiers who were deployed in the surrounding region of this Lal Mahal. The day selected was Chaitra Shukla Ashtami, 1585, Shalivan Chaka, which corresponds to April of 1663. So any guess what is the connection with this day, Chaitra Shukla Ashtami? It is not in this. This is not a scope of our discussion. But then,
just one day before Ram Navami, I think.
Yes, correct. The next day was Ram Navami. And with selected soldiers, Shivaji entered Mughal camp, pretending to be a Maratha soldiers serving for Mughals. So there were many Maratha Sardars, many Maratha commanders who were in the service of Mughals in that time. And the soldiers who were selected for this raid, they entered Mughal camp, pretending to be they are from the Maratha troops under Mughals. This Mughal camp all together, like including all the commanders, all the soldiers, it was predicted to have 70,000 in number. And there were two people, apart from soldiers, there were two of Shivaji's childhood friends, Balaji Deshpande and Chimanaji Deshpande, who were accompanying Shivaji. They were childhood friends. And they knew in and out of Lal Mahal. Though there were some changes made, the informers, with the help of informers, they could make a clear-cut idea about from where to enter and where Shaista Khan is staying, where his son is staying, everything, all the information was there with Shivaji. It is obvious that when making this level of raid, it is necessary to have a minute, each and every information that is required for the raid. So we have seen the example in the Uri, the surgical strike movie, where this raid, the raid or the surgical strike was planned only after getting all the necessary information, and nothing was planned without the information. So the information is very important, and to get the information from enemy's camp, we discussed in previous session, the informers are required, and informers are required at crucial place. Yeah. So Shivaji attacked on, he entered Shaista Khan's Mahal, Shaista Khan's room, attacked. So some of the historians claim this as surgical strike by Shivaji. So I would say it was a raid. So there was no term of surgical strike. Yeah. The unfortunate part is Shaista Khan survived this attack, because when the presence of Maratha soldiers was identified, the Begums of Shaista Khan, they immediately turned off all the candles and all the lights. So there was all chaos. Everything, all the red happened in the dark. Whichever natural light was available with that in night, with that the raid took place. Though Shaista Khan survived, he lost his 3 fingers of right hand. Shaista Khan's son, Abul Fateh Khan, was killed in this raid. In the chaos that followed, Shivaji and his accompanying soldiers mixed into Mughal army. They got mixed into Mughal army, and with the help of that, all the chaos, they came out of the camp. They came out of the Lal Mahal. So soon after this incident, Shaista Khan vacated Pune. He left Pune. He took all his things. He requested Aurangzeb to relieve him from this campaign. And Aurangzeb now he was not happy with Shaista Khan, and he was transferred to the region of Bengal. And after this, many rumors started making rounds about Shivaji. So few started saying that Shivaji can disappear. Shivaji has the power of going anywhere at any point of time. Few Mughals started saying that Shivaji is not a man, he's a ghost. So all the things started spreading, and Shivaji did not stop that. Any questions till now?
No, let's continue, Omkar.
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned earlier, in the interest of time, I included only 2 of the battles in which Shivaji took part. And because if we try to cover all the battles, it would be a huge topic. It will be a long discussion. And the agenda is like exploring the things or putting the points which are new or which are so most of things like the things will not change. The battles, the sequences, or the chronological things will not change every time. But the motive is to put the ideas or strategy point of view. So we'll move forward. So next part of our discussion is foundation of Navy. So this is very important part of his life, that he realized the importance of having command over sea. So whoever has the Navy commands the sea. And there was no presence of the Indian naval force in the region for many years, close to 3 centuries, if I'm not wrong, prior to Shivaji's time. So the last navy in the region was by Kadambas, and there were a small number of ships with Shankarrao More, who was a local king in the region of Kolhapur and Vishalgarh. But other than that, even that was at least 3 centuries prior to Shivaji's time. And because of the ignorance towards naval power, the coastal regions were dominated by foreign powers. During Shivaji's time, there were Portuguese, Siddhis, British, French, and Dutch. Though French, Dutch did not have dominant presence by the time of Shivaji on western coast, and British had not entered the British had not acquired any region by that time, by the time of Shivaji. But still, they were trying to search for the opportunity, right opportunity. But Portuguese and Siddhis were completely established in the region. And in order to have the dominance over this, it was important to have a full-fledged navy. So this foundation of navy or operation of navy started in the year 1657, when the regions of Kalyan and Bhiwandi were added to Swarajya. So after this campaign, Shivaji decided to establish naval force. The task of building ships, because the ship or frigate is important part of navy. So the first task that Shivaji took up was building of these ships. And this was started at two locations. One was at the creek at Durgadi, which is near Kalyan, Mumbai, and Pend, which is near Raigad. So at two locations, the work started. And we may get a question that if there was no Indian naval force in the region for 3 to 4 centuries, so how could Shivaji have the experience or people with expertise who could build a ship? So the answer is, yeah. So as local residents didn't have the experience of, they were, yeah, I think it's a typo here. So though the fisherman community was there in that time, but their vessels were limited to small boats. Even they did not have the experience of building the ship. So Shivaji took the help of Portuguese in the initial years. There was a person who had an expertise in building ships. His name was Rui Leita de Viegas. This was a Portuguese person. He was accompanied by his son, Ferna Viegas, and other 300 Portuguese men, to whom Shivaji gave this work of building the ships. And why would Portuguese work for Shivaji? This might be a question. But Shivaji made sure that he pays more than the other powers, other kingdom, or other powers like Siddhi or Portuguese or British. He made sure that he is paying more than them. So the Portuguese captain at Vasai, so when he observed all these actions, so he sent a letter to governor at the Portuguese governor at Goa. So this is a translated one. This is translated into English. So Raja Shivaji has taken up the work of building ships in order to counter Siddhis of Janjira. So the reason Shivaji gave to Portuguese was he wants to keep a check on the Siddhis. He has appointed Rui Leita de Viegas for this. And he has requested us, he has asked for the approval that the wood which is required for this work to be taken for our territory. But it is not of our benefit to approve this. If he manages to build these ships, it will be addition to his strength, and this will result in further strengthening him. And even though we have good relations with Shivaji now, so we have seen Shivaji never confronted all the enemies at once at the same time. So this was a time when Shivaji's struggle was at peak with Adil Shahi, and all other fronts were silent. Even though we have good relations with him now, these relations are not solid. If this relation is affected, his navy may be used against us. See how cautious, how observing these Portuguese were. And they were doing all their efforts to remove this Rui Viegas from this work. And finally, in 1660, they convinced Rui Viegas to leave this work. And they brought him back to Vasai, which was a station of Portuguese. But by this time, Shivaji's men had learned the basic techniques, basic things of building the required ships. Because of that, the task did not affect much. So today or past few years, if we see, our governments or still even today up to some extent, the emphasis was on import and not on the local manufacturing uh, or indigenous manufacturing. Yeah, it is agreed that
Oh, is it like,
Hello.
yeah, Omkar, we missed you. What happened?
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll.
So, yeah, thank you. So in the beginning, the government or any kingdom or any government may need to import the things, but it is very important to to acquire the things, learn the things of indigenous, to build the thing on in the region, in our own country over the period of time. Yeah. So I given one picture, the painting of the ships which were present in the time of Hindavi Swarajya. So the bigger one which we see are Gurab, and the smaller ones are Galbat. The smaller one is from Galbat category. Yeah. There were two main types of ships in the Navy, Hindavi Swarajya: Gurab and Galbat. So of these, Gurab and Galbats were used for carrying the cannons or ammunitions and soldiers. Secondly, these two were used for the purpose of battle or war. There were two more categories, which were Tarwa and Machwa, which were only for the logistics purpose. And in 1660, like the time when this Ruy Villegas left the work at Hindavi Swarajya, so there were, or we can say during the initial parts when the naval force started operating, there were 30 ships in all. Of that, 5 were Gurabs and 15 were Galbats. So Gurab is bigger in size. Galbat is slightly smaller. So we can say that there were 20 warships and rest 10 or 12, whichever were their balance, were for the logistics purpose. And by 1680, like the year when Shivaji passed away, so by that time, this total number of ships had reached 400. The woods which were used for building these ships were teak wood, mango, jackfruit. Obviously, for the reasons like it may have the durability, strength from that perspective. And since the ships operate in sea, because of the salted water of the sea, it is the durability of the wood needs to be more. The strength of the wood needs to be more. Of these, there was the number of teak wood trees were large in number in the region, but the selected trees which were less in number and which requires a large number of years to grow were prohibited from cutting for building the ships. And the commanders and naval officers were instructed to import the wood from other parts of the region, or to order it from other parts of the country. So the records say that the most of the wood which was used by, other than teak wood, which was used for the building the ships in Swarajya, were brought from the region of present-day Karnataka, where the forest was more denser. Daulat Khan was first chief of the army of Hindavi Swarajya. Apart from him, there were two more chief officers in the following years, in the coming years. Those were Mayanak Bhandari and Ventaji Sarangi. This Ventaji Sarangi, his name in the records come sometimes as Ventaji Sarangi, as well as sometimes as Darya Saranga. It is not clear whether the Darya Saranga was a position, it was a title given to him for the bravery, or it was a nickname for him. The majority of people from this navy were the residents of coastal region. There were fishermen, there were the tribes like Bhandari or Agari. So Shivaji utilized their bravery, their skills in the seafare into the strengthening of navy. So there is a record of Portuguese. It comes in this is from year 1664, where the building of frigates, frigate is one part of warship. Building of frigates was underway at the port of Chaul. And southern part of this Chaul was under Portuguese rule. The northern part was under Hindavi Swaraj. And Portuguese identified the potential threat. So the content we'll see in next slide shows how much the strength of Shivaji had grown by this time, of how much the strength of Hindavi Swarajya was grown by this time. So this is just a period of 5 to 6 years after foundation of the Navy. Yeah. So Chaul's captain writes to Portuguese governor that Shivaji is building 50 frigates in Chaul. Of these, 7 are already ready and soon will be deployed. We are requesting to give the clarity on whether we resist this activity of Shivaji or not. If we are to resist, they are requesting to send a sufficient backup army to counter. Shivaji was growing strong, and now there was a work underway to build 50 frigates. In 1660, we saw there were 30 warships in all, and of that 20 were bigger ships. And now the construction was going on for 50 frigates. The reply from governor was, since Shivaji has grown strong, we need to be careful, we need to be watchful while dealing with him. He says that we cannot attack him directly now. He has grown strong. But we are sending the troops to Chaul for the safety. They are acknowledging the strength of Shivaji, but even with that, they are not ready to take the risk. They have sent a backup troop. So this is a time when the campaigns like the assassination of Afzal Khan, the raid of Shaista Khan, the Battle of Panhala, and a raid on Surat had already that part of the history was done. So the news were spreading, and everyone was now aware what is the strength of Shivaji. There's one more mention of how much the Navy of Swarajya was growing. It's a letter in 1664. It says that there were 60 frigates in Swarajya. It says that there are 60 warships which are already working in Navy, Swarajya Navy. But this record also mentions that these ships to be of poor quality, poor build quality. Probably because there was no sufficient expertise. But the Navy of Hindavi Swarajya had become self-reliant by this time. And the ships in the Navy were not only for the wars, some of the ships were even being used for business. The no merchants were harmed by Shivaji's navy. So some of the British records mention the Maratha navy to be like similar to pirates, but that was not the case. Yeah, all the officers of navy were instructed not to harm any of the merchant. But the biggest difference is European merchants were prohibited from establishing trade centers on coast. Again, typo mistake, I'll correct it. The idea was if the European merchants, even if we take the examples of Portuguese, British, French, all of this entered India in the disguise of merchants, businessmen. Over the period of time, they established their trade centers on the coastal region. Then those trade centers were converted into military base, military camps. The forts were built, and the rest of the part of the history we know. But Shivaji, the differentiating thing in Hindavi Swarajya was even if any European merchant, it may be British or French, if anyone seeks the permission to establish a trade center, they are not allowed to start it on the coastal region. They were given the land either on the lease or maybe some other agreements, terms, but that was on the land, not in the coastal region. So one of such example is one of the grant, which was one of the approval which was given by Shivaji to British for the trade center, was in Rajapur, the place called Rajapur, which is near coastal region, but there are no seaports near to that. So seashore is at least 70 to 80 kilometers even today from that place. The intention was if the trade center gets converted into a power center in future, it should not be easy to logistically easy for those centers to get the help from their navy, the navy of the corresponding nations, European nations. So not only the ships were built, even some of the forts were built on the crucial islands. And I have listed a few of the forts, island forts built during Shivaji's time. So Sindhudurga, Vijayadurga, Suvarnadurga, Padmadurga, and Khanderi. So of these, Padmadurga was built very close to Janjira, the island of Janjira, where Siddhis were ruling. And Khanderi was built very close to Mumbai, where British had established their place. So I'm good at this picture of Sindhudurga. The unique thing about this Sindhudurga fort is there are Shivaji himself personally was present for inauguration or Bhumi Pujan of this fort. And there are the prints of his hand and foot preserved in this fort even today. And this place of Sindhudurga, it is very strategic. If the normal ship tries to reach this Sindhudurga from sea, either the enemy was not able to find the entrance of the fort, and it's also visible in the picture which I have included. There are small rocks and hillocks which are this fort is surrounded by. And it was difficult for the large ships, large frigates to attack, to enter, to come near the region of this fort. Only small boats, small ships could enter this region. It was strategically very important. Yeah, Navy succeeded in acquiring majority of the western coast. Siddhis were confined to limited territory around Janjira Island. However, all the attempts to capture Janjira failed. Not only during Shivaji's time, but even after his time, even during the time of Sambhaji Maharaj, even during Rajaram's time, even during the time of Peshwai, this Janjira could not be captured. The main reason in Shivaji's time or during Sambhaji's time was Siddhis were known to change the parties, change the sides, and take the side of whoever was strong at that point. So at time, in the beginning, in the initial time, Siddhis were loyal to Adil Shah. When Adil Shah became weak, they became loyal to Mughals. And towards the end of Shivaji's life, Shivaji's time, around 1678 and after, Siddhis started taking the sides of British. This Khanderi fort, which I have mentioned in this list, it was built specifically for that. British were supporting Siddhis and were not ready to the orders which were given by Shivaji. So this Khanderi was built to keep a check on both Janjira, Siddhi as well as British. Yeah. So any doubts till now? If no, we'll proceed with the unique topic, the unique way to tackle British. It is Bill of Exchange. The English records on Shivaji. This is an article, or it's a set of book published by Bharat Itihas Sanshodhak Mandal, Pune, where they have given the records of the accounts and letters which were there in the British records and which were related to Shivaji. They have made a collection of this. And these letters frequently were making a mention of the term Bill of Exchange or promissory note. In today's work, this is also called as promissory note. So promissory note is something where cashless deals, cashless transactions are done. The amount involved in the deal is more, and it is difficult for the either party to either present, to pay, or to accept the large amount. So in such cases, there is something called as promissory note which comes into picture, where the party which has to pay gives a promissory note in the name of the other party, where the second person can present that promissory note to the bank, and that person will be paid that much amount without any conditions. So there is something also called as bank guarantee, which some of us might have heard. So there are certain conditions which are put in bank guarantee, but if you look at promissory note, there are no conditions. So if someone has brought the promissory note, the bank is bound to pay. And we may wonder that what is the difference between promissory note and the check or demand draft? The difference is for demand draft, the payment is already done by a person. In case of check, there has to be a sufficient balance in the account of the person. But in case of promissory note, the bank pays on behalf of the person who has issued this promissory note. The historians were coming across this term of Bill of Exchange. They're repeatedly coming across this. So one of the historian, late Ninad Bedekar, he arranged these letters in the chronological order. And when they wrote the sequence of events, there was altogether a thing which came to the notice of historians, which is related to this Bill of Exchange. Yeah, so I have included that here as part of our session. So Shivaji had purchased copper from British of Mumbai. So British had different branches, different stations in India, or we can say East India. It was British when we say it is East India Company. It was there in several parts of India. It was in Mumbai. It was in Surat. It was in Kolkata. And most of Shivaji's dealings with British used to happen with this East India Company of Mumbai. Shivaji purchased this copper at the time of coronation. So for what was the purpose, intention of this purchasing the copper is not known, but it could be either for making the coins at the time of coronation on the larger number, or it may be in the factories where cannons were being manufactured. So as per the terms of this deal or this business, British wanted the amount, the payment against this supply to be done in cash, which is possibly it could be rupee. When I say possibly it could be rupee, that is because it comes in these letters that there was no sufficient stock of cash on Raigad. Raigad being a capital, not having sufficient stock of cash looks a bit impractical for me. So it could be a reason that the coins which were used, frequently used, widely used during Shivaji's time were honed. It was a golden coin. It used to be a golden coin, and the conversion rate with rupee used to be around one honed corresponded to around 4 rupees in that time. And the rupee coin in that time used to be of a silver. And as there was no sufficient stock of probably a rupee currency on Raigad, so Shivaji offered, as this was a issue, this was a challenge, that how to make a payment, and British were they wanted only in cash. So Shivaji offered to pay the amount in the form of bill of exchange, which is promissory note. This bill of exchange was to be encashed from Golconda. So this bill of exchange, which was issued to British of Mumbai, was to be encashed from Golconda. The reason is Golconda or the Qutub Shahi were paying annual tribute, some determined amount to Hindavi Swarajya in exchange of protection from Mughals and Adil Shahi. So the idea was there could be a sufficient amount, sufficient cash in the treasury at Swarajya treasury at Golconda. But the next challenge was British of Mumbai did not have logistics service to Golconda. So the bill of exchange, this promissory note, was sent to Surat. So Surat had the service, this courier. In today's analogy, we can say that Surat had a courier service to Golconda. So it was this note was sent to Surat, and they were asked to collect cash on behalf. So when the courier person of Surat, British Surat, went to Golconda, so he came to know that Prahlad Niraji was Shivaji's officer at Golconda, and who had the authority to make the payment from treasury. He was not present at Golconda, and he had gone to Raigad. So this officer or courier person who had gone to Golconda returned without cash, and bill of exchange was sent back to Mumbai with the remarks that will not be comfortable collecting the payment in future from Golconda, which is against your bill of exchange, and you can take care of that on your end. So Raigad is near to you, so you can take care of that. Will not be able to support in future. So British officer was at Mumbai that time, Gerard Onger. He sent his translator, was Narayan Shenvi, this Narayan Shendvi used to work for British as a translator, and his mention often comes in the records of Hindavi Swarajya as well. So he was sent to Raigad for collecting the cash, thinking that now there may be a sufficient cash in stock at Raigad. But when this Narayan Shendvi reached Raigad, so Prahlad Niraji had already returned to Golconda. In addition, moreover to that, Shivaji was not present at Raigad this time. Moropanta Pingle was Prime Minister of Hindavi Swarajya. He was present, and this Narayan Shendvi met him and requested for the cash payment. So when he said that Prahlad Niraji is back to Golconda, he said, now we cannot send everything back to Surat and again Surat to Golconda, collecting the payment, again back to Surat and Surat to Mumbai. So this has become a tedious job. So he requested to make a cash payment on Raigad. But again, Moropant Pingle repeated the same thing. There is no cash on Raigad. So we cannot pay you cash. So, but he gave a different option that we would pay the goods instead of cash. The goods were coconut, rice, or betel nut. So these goods were part of tax paid by the citizens or people of Hindavi Swarajya. In previous session, we saw that farmers were allowed to pay the pay the tax in terms of goods. But Narayan Shendvi did not have the authority to accept these goods instead of cash. He was instructed only to collect the cash, so he returned back to Mumbai. After a few weeks passed, so British learned that Shivaji has returned to Raigad. So this time, not only Narayan Shendvi, this this Gerard Ongar, he sent one more British officer, because British used to consider themselves as over smart. So they might have thought that Narayan Shendvi is not capable. So one more British officer, Francis Moliere, was sent along with Narayan Shendvi. Both of them went to Raigad. So the intention was personally discuss the matter with Shivaji and settle the things, get the cash. Shivaji welcomed both of them, but refused to pay the cash. The reason was same. There is no cash on Raigad. So Shivaji gave one more offer that since there is no cash and we want to continue our trade relations with British in future as well, and I'm the king of this kingdom. So he said, I'll give you one more offer, that since we don't have cash, so we'll pay either gold or silver, which is equivalent to that amount, which is outstanding. So again, it's a trick here, that Narayan Shendvi and Francis Moliere, both of them did not have authority to accept gold, silver, or anything else instead of cash. So what they planned was Narayan Shendvi returned to Mumbai. Francis Moliere stayed at Raigad, thinking that he is smart, so he can trick the king and his people. He thought that somehow he thought that he will manage to get the cash. He stayed there for 2-3 weeks, but he could not get cash. He failed. Francis Moliere also failed to get the cash. So finally, this Gerard Ongar, who was officer at Mumbai, he finally gave authority to Narayan Shendvi that immediately go to Raigad, and as long as they are giving this offer of giving the goods or silver or cash in place of cash payment, as long today they are saying that they will give the goods. So as long as they're saying take the goods, if anything happens and if they deny to give these alternatives and ask us or force us to get the cash from Golconda, it will be again a challenge. So finally, this Narayan Shendvi was given authority and he came to Raigad. And after discussions, Narayan Shendvi agreed to accept silver. So there was a final task pending from the side of Shivaji, that the price of silver around that time was rupees 23 per share. Share is the unit of measurement of mass in the old era. I'm not sure how much is one share corresponds to in kgs. There are different opinions on that. Few say that there are one share is 2 kgs. Few say that there are 4 kgs in one share. But keeping that aside, the silver which was priced at 23 rupees in other parts of Swarajya was now offered to Narayan Shendvi for rupees 28 per share. When he inquired that other parts of region the silver is 23, what is the reason for keeping it at 28 here? He said it's 28 rupees on Raigad, so we can't help much. So either take this silver at this rate or go to Golconda and collect the cash payment. So to avoid the things complexities, since Narayan Shendvi had the authority at this time, she accepted the silver, whichever silver equivalent to the amount outstanding from Shivaji. So that amount of silver was given. So Gerard Onjar, he sent a report to East India Company headquarters of this matter. The final report says that Narayan Shendvi has returned today from Raigad. We received silver at the inflated price in exchange of copper, which was sold to Shivaji. This matter, which was going on from 1.5 years, is finally settled. And we have suffered a loss of 22% in this case. So not always you have to fight on the land, not always you have to fight on sea, not always you have to need to have one-on-one confrontation, one-on-one fight. Not every time you have to make a raid. Sometimes putting a financial pressure on enemy can achieve a different result, a more result. Yeah, so this is a unique case in the life of Shivaji. This is what, yeah. So here we end the session. So as I said, the strategy of Shivaji was not same for all the enemies. It changed from enemy to enemy. And Shivaji had realized that these British are they are hungry for the power. They are in the disguise of merchant, businessman, but their ultimate goal is power or to conquer the region. And the method that British could understand is that may not be same as or to deal with British may not be same as that was with Mughals, or it was with Adil Shah, or it was with Siddhis. This is a unique case, bill of exchange. Yeah.
Okay,
So that's all from the
fine
presentation
then.
part.
Thank you, Omkar, for this session. Now, any comments or questions or answers? Let's have a short
Yeah.
interactive session, please.
Yes, yes.
One question I had was, how come Shivaji appointed Daulat Khan as the first Navy Admiral?
Yeah. One reason is probably because of his skills in the seafaring. Could be because of the bravery.
Okay.
Or it could be he might have felt that Daulat Khan is loyal to Hindavi Swarajya. He could be loyal to Hindavi Swarajya.
Okay.
Yeah, even if we take the example of our independence, for many years, close to 5 to 10 years, the admirals of Indian Navy were British.
Okay.
That is purely because of the expertise of the person. Yeah. And as we came across in the previous sessions, so there was no any hatred from Shivaji for any of the religion, though he emphasized on protection of Hindus, but he welcomed people from other religions as well for the duty of Hindavi Swaraj. One more example is this appointing a Portuguese person for building the warships. Again, it was because of the skills.
Okay. Nagi, you have any
Yeah,
question?
yeah,
I just had one question. This last item, right? This bill of exchange.
Yeah.
Was this really a planned strategy, or it just worked out because there's only one instance quoted? So because when you initially were talking about this in the last sessions, I thought there is some more detail to it. All this revolves only around one instance.
Hmm.
So was this a planned strategy, or it just happened like this?
It could be planned strategy, because the reason being given that cash is not available at Raigad, which is capital, it seems impractical.
Mm-hmm.
It may be, it may not be. It could be the thing which turned out.
Okay.
But the reason given looks impractical for me, that cash being not available at the capital of kingdom.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Omkar, you showed the picture of one island port, right? I forgot the name.
Yes,
Maybe
Sindhudurga.
Sindhudurga. That is
Yes.
that the present photo? Is that fort still there?
Yes, this is still there.
But this entire fort was built by Shivaji, is it?
Yes, correct.
Okay, okay.
So the main finance for this fort came from the raid on Surat, attack on Surat. So whatever wealth was, whatever amount was collected in the raid at Surat, so majority of that went into the construction of this fort.
Okay. Because it looks quite impressive, and but it is not listed as one of the frequented tourist spots or anything. So I was just wondering what happened.
Yeah, there is actually, thanks for bringing up this topic. So there is a department of Government of India called as Archaeological Survey. This department, what I believe is the main, this department was originally started by British, and their main intention was no one recreates the things Shivaji, or the things were created by Shivaji or his followers. So this department, if I talk about the region of Maharashtra, so this department has taken care that the forts of Shivaji won't come back to their original, there's no scope for renovation. So this
Okay.
department has taken full care of that.
Yeah,
Even today, there are no approvals for any renovations from this department.
Okay.
But there are no checks on the youths or the goons going on the forts, doing the parties.
Okay. Okay. No. Hopefully that will change.
Yeah,
In fact,
yeah.
I have heard even the place where Afzal Khan was killed, that there was a monument there, and over a period of time they removed it. Is it?
Yeah, it is not removed, it is locked. Like the entry is prohibited there. So thing is, as we know, Shivaji's character, Afzal Khan was killed, his head was cut and sent to Rajgarh, but his body was allowed to be cremated near Pratapgarh. So that is Shivaji's character. So the person is dead, the enemy or the rivalry is over. So he allowed that his body to be cremated there. And over the period of time, people converted that into the they converted that into a big kabar and dargah. And the tourists coming to Pratapgarh, so many of them were hesitant to go to the fort and roam on the fort, but more crowd was at this kabar or at this dargah, which was built unofficially. And now it is locked after few protests and few even there were few incidents where people attacked and tried to destroy that kabar. After that, it was locked and prohibited from entering.
Okay. Yeah, I really hope that they develop this Sindhudurga because it looks very impressive in the photo.
Yes, yes. And there are 3 wells on this fort, and all 3 have sweet water.
Okay.
That is one more unique thing. Usually, we observe that if it's an island, the water tend to be salty water, or it has a lot of salts in that, percentage of salt.
Okay. Any other question from other attendees? Fine then. So in that case, we can end the session with the Shanti Mantra.
Any inputs from
Yes.
what, sir?
Sir,
Yeah.
any questions or comments you
There's
want
no
to add?
input.
So-
It was interesting to listen to you.
Yeah, anything you would like to add?
No, I'm not adding on to this.
Okay.
It was quite interesting session. As always, I have heard you before on the history of the Maratha history and also the history of Kashmir. And it is similar in terms of details. Yeah. But I felt that this bill of exchange maybe a singular instance. It may not be a planned refusal
Correct.
because Shivaji is unlikely to, at least his image that I know of,
Mhm.
unlikely to cause a cheating on that.
Yeah.
If he had made a promise, he would have made a promise. But if there is a suffering because of some reason, it took about 1.5 years to collect the money.
Mm.
It may be incidental. There may be hardships in the Raigad also.
Mm.
Otherwise, I don't think it would have been a planned strategical
Okay.
issue. I doubt it. Because his character has always been very upright.
Mm.
There is always of course, he would give it back in terms of strategic, diplomatic, platform.
Yeah.
He would counter their, crookedness with crookedness. But if he had made a promise, he would have kept it.
Yeah.
What my overall study of Shivaji
Okay.
comes through. That's what I felt. This is a comment on Nagi's question whether
Mhm.
it was a strategic or is it an incidental happening. I believe it would be incidental.
Yeah, this could be incidental, and yeah, but cannot deny because looking at how British had
If British had tried to trap him on
Yeah.
that, he would have paid back in the same
Yeah.
coin, you say, if he had tried. But if they had been sincere in giving him whatever the credit he wanted,
Mm.
then they would have paid back.
Mm.
Usually, see, a leader of standing, a statesman, a far-sighted leader would never compromise on his credibility.
Mm.
It is extremely important for a leader to retain his credibility. And I don't think Shivaji was not I don't think he was not unaware of it.
Hmm.
See, it is not only, see, credibility always affects not only the enemy, but also your supporters. If you don't have credibility, your ability to command will reduce.
Hmm.
Credibility stands on integrity. Integrity means if you make a promise, you have to keep it.
Yeah.
You can't say that I have made a promise, but now I backtrack on that, unless there is a sufficiently strong reason to do so. There is a, this is on the side, this is not directly connected to this, but then I had read a book, a review on a book.
Mhm.
I think the author of the books is by a journalist.
Hmm.
The book was by a journalist by name Anderson or so. And I had seen a review of that book by M.V. Kamath some 30, 40 years ago. So the review says, see, the author is just talking about the American presidents. American presidents. There were some 40 presidents until that time. And he says, to be the leader of the most powerful country in the world, one has to have many qualities. And he says, the first 10 of them are integrity, integrity, integrity 10 times.
Mm.
And if I look at our own history, I see Shivaji was one of the finest leaders during the last 1,000 years. Political leadership. It was one of the finest. And without integrity, he cannot build that.
Mm.
So I don't suspect that his integrity is questionable. He would have paid back because he was in a very weak position and he was building an empire, which is based on the ethos of this land. And he would have adopted different strategies to give back to the enemies. He had to carve out an empire, for which he would have adopted strategies, but it cannot be at the expense of integrity. And this is my general reading of Shivaji. The only time when he might have erred, everybody can err, right? Especially when you are young, could have been, that king in the Konkan, Javali. So when he was to conquer Javali, there was one instance between the local chieftain and Shivaji. That could have been the only violation in his life, is what I feel. Because this happened at a mature age in 1664 or so. No, 1674 or so. Right? 1674, when Shivaji was already 44 years.
Correct.
And he died at the age of 50. So it was a mature time when he was establishing himself as a Chhatrapati. It's very unlikely that he would have compromised on his integrity.
Correct, sir. But one point where we can consider is even these British were not, they didn't maintain integrity. Neither the Portuguese maintained integrity. And going by what Omkar said was Shivaji's spy network was pretty strong, which means he had a pretty good idea of what these people were thinking and doing, right? So that is one possibility is there.
Yeah, if they had double crossed him, then he would have paid back in the same coin.
Yeah, in
that
fact,
is possible.
there was one incident.
If he had not, he would not have. That's what I feel.
So actually, there was one incident where he had experienced the non-credibility of British or how they are backstabbing. It was when Shivaji was trapped in Panhala. And a few months prior to that, there was an agreement signed between British and Shivaji that British would not create any nuisance for Hindavi Swarajya. But when Shivaji was trapped, the British supplied their the cannons of long range to Siddhi Jawahar, thinking that once trapped, Shivaji cannot escape.
Okay. Yeah, I'm aware of this point.
Yeah. So that could be there in back of mind.
That is possible.
In fact,
I mean, it is possible that he
Yeah.
would have been angry about this. Yeah. I'm aware of this double cross.
in fact, when there was a first agreement between Shivaji and British, it was in 1659, immediately after Afzal Khan. The incident was some of the ships of Afzal Khan were there on the port of this Ratnagiri. And when Shivaji killed Afzal Khan and he sent his troops to capture those ships,
Yeah.
the British directly, without any consent, ordered or the helped those ships to
Escape.
sail back to sea. And there, it was a first warning given by Shivaji not to interfere in the local matters to British. And the second violation was when a few months after, when Shivaji was trapped in Panhala. And they not only supplied the cannons, they sent the person who operates the cannon. Even that was presented by British. So that could be somewhere in the mind that British are not trustworthy.
Mm.
Also, right, a person like Shivaji was well aware of the Mughal strategies and unfairness. Is it fair to assume that he would have already noticed the unfair trade practices of Portuguese and the British? They were not fair in their trade with India.
Yeah, that is possible. Then I no. That is possible. He might have noticed that, and but then here
Yeah.
he did pay back. It is not that he did not pay back.
Right, sir.
Yes.
See, he could have denied that entirely.
Yeah.
If he had denied, he had the thing of they will attack him, right? It's a game he played, I think, and then dragged it for 1.5 years. That is remarkable.
Yeah, he dragged it to a position where British could be in a position saying that now give whatever you want to give and settle the matter.
Okay, so we'll think about it. Nice comment, sir.
Again, it's a guess actually. Again,
Correct.
it's
We
a
are
guess.
guessing.
Like,
Correct.
yeah.
Anyway, it's a good point. Very good, actually. So again, thank you, Omkar, for this very nice session.
Thank
So
you all for the
I will
support.
request Nagi to end the session with Shanti Mantra, please.
नमस्ते सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः